Hi, this is Rob Sheen from the Source Conference, and I'm here with Phillip Maddux, who's a trusted AppSec advisor and senior solutions engineer for Signal Sciences. And he's going to be speaking at Source Boston coming up in May 9th and 10th. And his talk is on honeypots, deception, and Frankenstein, which sounds like an awesome title. So we haven't actually had a honeypot talk in a while at Source, so I'm actually looking forward to yours. Can you tell us a little bit about your talk?
Yeah, absolutely. So the talk originated from a few projects that have been really a hobby of mine over the last several years. There's an open source project and a website that basically aggregates honeypot data. So that's where this talk stems from. But it starts out where I like to explain the 101 of honeypots, right? Because not everybody in the audience may understand the concept and the different types of honeypots and things like that. So I like to explain that. And then the part on deception, this is an area that I've been diving deeper into in the last year or so. Deception is a new sector in cybersecurity in the industry, and so trying to find out what that's all about. So I've had a lot of conversations with colleagues across the industry, just talking about it, how they think about it, what are they planning with it, and so it's been really interesting, hearing their feedback on that, also the challenges they see with that. And so it's really that part of the talk is really me just sharing what I've learned,
Hmm.
and hopefully just to get the dialogue going in the community on deception. And
Cool.
then the last piece, which is Frankenstein. This has to do with one of the projects that I put together, that website I mentioned. And so it's been an interesting. It's kind of the story of this project and how how I started it out and trying to get funding to support or figure out the funding for supporting the infrastructure for it, and how I've led to leveraging multiple cloud services to be able to support and operate this project at scale. And so that's kind of this, I call it my Frankenstein architecture. So I dive into that and that story and talk about that, and then also share how that website and that project can be used to get started running honeypots. Because I like to encourage people to start running honeypots and at least dabble in it and give it a whirl.
Cool. All right, I got some follow-up questions for you then.
Sure.
So you mentioned the cyber detection space and how deception space and how that's kind of an upcoming thing. What do you see as some of the benefits of having some kind of deception as part of your cybersecurity program?
Yeah, totally. So,
Because that's definitely a non-traditional idea.
right, absolutely. And I do talk a little bit about, again, what I've learned in conversations of how that's kind of evolved. But I mean, the benefits are really, identifying, being able to trip up and identify an actor that's already, that's compromised your network and is trying to traverse across your network, right? So that's the core benefit of it. But it is an additional complementary control to your defense in depth strategy on defending your network. So that's really where the benefit is, and I think it's upping your game and also increasing risk to the attacker, right?
Mm.
You're making your network more risky, more dangerous for them,
Hmm.
and so with the end goal is you're not going to be able to stop all compromises, but if they realize, hey, even if they discover that you are running honeypots, uh, they're gonna probably leave and look for a softer target, right? Like they might
Hmm.
go to your competitor instead of focusing on you, because they don't want to burn their presence or their kits or whatever it may be.
Okay. That's interesting. So, are there any particular challenges with implementing deception as part of your cyber program?
Yeah, and I cover this in the talk, and there's a few of them.
Just
Um,
kind of like the top one. I just want it
yeah.
kind of high level.
So I think the main challenge has been really it's organizational maturity, right? So a lot of organizations are thinking about this, and they're starting to think about it because they've kind of gotten a handle on the basics, right? Like they've got patch management down, vulnerability assessment down, and so now they're starting to think about this, but they don't really understand what a deception program looks like, right? Like what are the goals? What's the strategy? What are the things you need to look out for, and things like that. So I think that's the high level challenge today, and some organizations are starting to address that and figure it out.
Hmm.
But it's gonna. I think there's more time ahead of us before we start seeing deception programs rolled out consistently.
Got it. Um, you mentioned getting funding to be able to scale it up. Do you find it's difficult or expensive to do this,
Yeah,
or is it something that other people can kind of do on a shoestring?
yeah. So I certainly like running your own honeypot at home, or something like that, or even on one node in the cloud. You can do really really cheaply. With my project, what I'm trying to do is aggregate data from multiples, numerous sensors that are out on the internet. So collecting all that data and storing it, and making it accessible. The In doing this in the cloud, the most significant cost is going to be storage, right? That just ends up, if
Mm,
you look at cloud, compute's relatively cheap, but it really comes down to when you have to store data, that's where
mm,
the charges kind of build up pretty quickly.
right.
And so that's been interesting, and I've currently am funding it kind of, it's a hobby out of pocket, but as more sensors get rolled out, because with this project anybody can roll out a sensor and contribute data.
Hmm.
That's going to be more storage that I have to handle. So
Right.
and I go through that in the talk, and how some of my attempts in trying to address that, and then also some things that have happened to help with that. So
Sure. Cool. Cool. Um, it sounds like it's because it's open source. It sounds like you actually want people to contribute to the project, and contribute sensors and whatnot. But what kinds of organizations do you think would be good to either implement a honeypot or maybe to contribute to the project?
yeah, so I think first I think about just individuals in the security community, right? Like just experimenting with it, learning from it, seeing what data, and kind of analyzing that as the data comes in, and just benefiting from the experience of actually doing it. I think there, as far as organizations, so it would be organizations that are interested in identifying potential threats that might be hitting their internet-facing properties. Because if you put a sensor on the internet, you're going to get a ton of noise.
Right.
That may not be interesting to a lot of organizations or some organizations, but there may be some use cases for it. But yeah, they would benefit from also just the data that gets collected, right? From as you kind of think about your threat information program and how you're feeding that data into your other defenses, like your IDS or firewalls or what have you.
Mhm. Cool. Cool. Um, awesome. Well, it sounds really cool. So you mentioned the one last thing I want to ask you about. You mentioned the HoneyDB project. Is that the name of the project itself?
Yeah, so HoneyDB is the website, the name of the website
Okay.
that aggregates all the data from sensors. And it also, there's an API that you can get access to download some of the data.
Mhm.
And then also it, provides some high level graphs and things like that, so you can browse the data as well.
Got it. All right. Cool. Well, I really look forward to seeing this talk. It sounds really interesting, and I'd love to see kind of the latest and greatest of what people are playing around with honey nuts. That's a tried and true way to mess with attackers that's been played with over the years and used for some pretty interesting things. So definitely looking forward to see the talk at Source Boston coming up on May 9th and 10th. And if any of you guys watching in want to continue this conversation with Philip, he's going to be at the conference and he's going to be doing his talk on honeypots. So we'll see you all soon. Thanks. Thanks,
Cool.
Philip.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Great. Bye.